And we're live.
Hello.
And today we have the only Gudrun I know. Apparently Gudrun isn't that uncommon a name. It's kind of amazing.
It is in this country, I think, in the UK, but everywhere else not so much.
Yeah. It sounds Viking to me, but it's an old
It
English
is.
name,
It is, yeah.
Oh, it's Viking. So
Yeah. It's
Viking from where exactly?
So they use it in all the Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
It's on the approved list in Iceland, and it's a very old Germanic name. And there was a Queen Gudrun and a Saint Gudrun in the UK.
Oh, wow.
As yet, I have never met another Gudrun.
Wow, this is interesting to me because half my family is Scandinavian, so from Norway.
Very nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful country.
I managed to totally disrail the start there. You usually ask the question like, no, I did. So, don't get any like. I mean,
1 minute 15 seconds in, I've already ruined Tim's amazing show. I'm so sorry, Tim.
But I would guess that's the most common question people ask, isn't it? It's like Gudrun's an unusual name.
It is, yeah. Both my names are fairly unusual, especially in England. So, yeah, I'm pretty used to explaining my name as best I can. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to give you a chance to explain something else. Like, what do you do? Why are you such a talented person that you're worthy of appearing on this show?
Well, I just thought that you and I had spent a lot of time together in conferences around the country, so you wanted to see me some more. No, so I'm a copywriter, a content marketer. I'm passionate about history and heritage, and sharing stories about places of interest that people might not be aware of. And I love meeting new people, so it's nice to be on this show. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody's got. So I hope that makes me just about worthy.
Yes, we have a viewer. This is Christina.
Oh, it's Christina. Oh, hi, Christina.
Oh, this new intro doesn't. This new overlay doesn't work so well, does it? With this.
Christina said hi, Christina, and then someone else is on YouTube saying it might be a spam. I guess I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think that's a spam comment. Unless bomb is a word.
English history expert and writer, and I know you were on Tim's book chat as well.
No,
you weren't.
Christina was. Christina, whose name just popped up, she's been on.
Yeah. Oh, I just popped up when you were talking about it, so I thought you were talking.
I was trying to recruit. You see, I was trying to recruit.
Oh, you're recruiting. Oh, this is going to be on it.
It's like when you're chatting somebody up and then somebody comes in and just starts saying, like, no.
I wouldn't have noticed because I've been terrible at chatting people up. That's why I've been married so long. It's easier.
So you're going to be on it. You said you're a writer. What have you written? Tell us about your work.
So I'm a copywriter. I've been a published writer maybe 25 years this year. I started out writing for Waterstones, which is a big national book chain here in the UK. And they used to have a magazine that was book reviews and interviews with children and young people's authors. And it was national, but it happened to be based in my local Waterstones in Newcastle. So when I was 14, I wrote a book review and sent it in, and they published it. And my English teacher got me into the group. So we used to go down to London to meet the children's authors of the day. We had a tour around Penguin Books. We had a private tour of the British Library. So we saw their super special room where they keep their most valuable items. So it's a fireproof room. So if the British Library ever burns down, their favourite books and artefacts are safe in this. Maybe it's asbestos. They didn't tell us. It could have been asbestos, but it's a special room. So yes, I've been a writer for 25 years, and I write. I work for all kinds of businesses. So I write their blogs, their podcast show notes, their vlogs. Pretty much anything that you can think of that somebody wants writing, it usually falls to me. And I've worked with a range of different people, digital marketers, accountants, IT experts, personal finance experts, So yeah, it's not anything that people want writing. It's anybody who wants something writing. But my interest is in history and heritage.
Oh, okay. Okay. So tell us about historical heritage or history heritage. That's James, my boyfriend, saying, "Yay, cheering on the Northeast."
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Tell us about okay, no, wait, I want to ask you something else. I am really curious about the British Library in London that you said there's like these important artifacts.
Yes.
What did you see there?
So what it is, it's not necessarily the oldest things in their collection, but it's things that they feel should be preserved. So, for instance, they have some of Wilfred Owen's original poetry, which was very exciting to me because I was GCSE students in England. We study war poetry, and I was studying war poetry at the time, so it was very exciting. They have it's a very random collection of things that the British Library thinks are valuable. They had a book of letters that Mary Shelley had put together. She had a little urn with Shelley's ashes and a little lock of his hair, and that was her prized possession. They had some miniature books that the Brontes had written when they were children. Oh. So they'd crafted and bound these tiny little stories when, before they became, Acton and Corabelle and what have you. So they had these little books. At the British Library, we've got them. They've got some illustrations by one of the Henrys, I think, who'd been on a trip when he was a young man, and they just acquired a collection of Laurence Olivier's letters and documents and stuff, and so they were very proud of that, and that was going to be kept safe in case anything happened to that. So it's eclectic, and it's not necessarily the oldest or the most interesting, but it's what they consider to be worthy of protection and locking down, and I shouldn't use that word, locking down, should I? Keeping safe. If the worst should happen, then it's a special. It just looks like an ordinary room, just an ordinary storage room, but it's fireproof in the bowels of the library.
It's interesting because as an American, we look to the UK as a very romanticized literature, and so we're going to have our stereotypes of what that looks like. So it's fun to hear what you have actually in places like that.
Yeah, it was because you don't know what to expect. We were invited to meet an author. I think it was an author called Geraldine McCaughren. So we met her at this was 20 years ago, so she's probably not that famous now. But we went to Penguin and went round with the Puffin, which is the children's bit, and then for some reason we got to go to the British Library as well. So not normally what happens to English school children. I mean, it sounds like it could be one of those stories from an English school children's novel, but it isn't. It's very valuable experiences.
And the children's literature we think of, I think of Paddington Bear and Mary Poppins, and so James is popping on and saying, yes, as Christelle realized, we have castles, history, and old books.
Yeah, pretty much. That's all we have here. We have the royals, we have castles, and old things, really old things. So it was the whole point of the group was to highlight people who were publishing something new. So a lot of them were people I hadn't heard of, and there was those kind of things that you read as a child, but it was more aimed at the young adult market. We did have an American guy called Robert Cormier. His stuff is amazing. But it was almost always British authors. We had Michael Rosen, who you might know, who's a poet and an author. We actually did the opening of the Seven Stories, which is a big book-related museum for children in Newcastle. So we had Michael Rosen came to that. Roger McGough, who's a poet. He's actually from Liverpool, not Newcastle. But so it was all the latest books that were coming out, and we asked the authors to talk about them and share their inspiration and talk to us about their writing process and things like that. And it was all very much driven by us, the teenagers. So an incredible opportunity, which sadly is no longer there. It's gone now.
Well, does this place still exists though in Newcastle. Is there?
Well, so Waterstones, the bookshop does, yeah. So Waterstones is national; they have them everywhere.
Okay.
But the magazine was called In Brief, and that folded probably about 3 or 4 years after I joined.
Okay.
Around the time I sort of moved on to college and university, it sort of sadly closed down. And I think I'm not aware of anything like that that's available for young people. Certainly not outside of London. You know, we don't get much like that up in the north. So it's a shame, really.
Okay.
So I'm going to jump in here, even though I know Christelle's got to leave early because she's got a highfalutin.
I went on I did my little tangent because I got really interested in the children's.
I know. I'm sorry. I could talk about that honestly all day.
Yeah,
so.
Gudrun, you've got to jump in at times because it's like she'll just keep talking about it. But
that's fine. I'm happy.
I've actually got because like you are kind of like you're pivoting more into the historical space because that is your passion, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So
yeah.
I was going to ask a practical question for Christelle the next time she's over in the UK visiting James, who's in Hartlepool. What are the hidden gems of the Northeast from a historical point of view? Like, what would you say are your top 5 things that they can even be like well-known things? And
there are so many. And if you want, I have an entire blog series about this, which you can go and look at. I think why this is something I'm sort of passionate about is because Newcastle upon Tyne it's known as the party city. It's one of the top 10 nights out for stag and hen do's for people getting married and they come and have a wild time. But there is so much history that is completely overlooked. I mean, so in Newcastle city centre alone, there's at least 10, 15, 20 things you could go and see. So Tim, you'll have gone past it, is the Castle Keep, which is, I say it's a medieval building, but it's been built upon. So it was actually, the original castle was built by the Romans, because the northeast of England, the coast, is of strategic importance when you had to defend the country. So because we're right on the coast, you can see anybody who's coming. Maybe your ancestors from Norway are coming, Christelle, and we have to defend against them. Sorry about that. And of course, we had the River Tyne, which was really important for shipping and transportation, and also shipbuilding later on. So the Romans quickly saw the importance of that particular area, and they built a castle, and they built the first of the Tyne bridges across the Tyne, which was called Ponsalius. And then in about 1072, after the Norman conquest, the challenge that William had was that while most of England, because we think that obviously they were all separate countries at that point, so England pretty much caved in and went, okay, you're here, you're our new French overlords, we'll go along with that. But up in the north, they said, oh, no, we're not having that. We had our own kings in Northumbria for thousands of years. And so William thought, well, what am I going to do? So he sent one of his sons up to Newcastle and built what is the Newcastle, which is what the city is named for. So that, if you want to start off there, that's a good starting place. If you go down onto the quayside, you'll see Bessie Surtees' house, which is a sort of, it's like a Tudor style, but it's actually sort of Stuart era. Bessie Surtees is not particularly famous, really, but everybody goes to look at her house because it's perfectly preserved. And what she did was she fell in love with a young man who was a merchant, and her dad said, nope, I don't approve of this young man. So she eloped, and she climbed out of her bedroom window and rode off into the sunset. And then her young man became very wealthy and very successful, and her dad said, okay, we forgive you, come home. So her house is preserved there, so you can go and see that. Other things that you should see anything pretty much in Newcastle city centre is built by the architect Richard Granger in the sort of mid-Victorian period. So his stuff is spectacular. So there's a whole area of Newcastle called Granger Town, which is right in the centre. So we've got Gray's Monument, which is the monument to Earl Grey of Earl Grey tea fame. who was about one of only 2 prime ministers from the northeast of England. The other one was Tony Blair. So, his war record's not so good. So Granger Town is spectacular. You've got the Granger Market, which was built by him. He designed the central station. So there's a lot of these beautiful Victorian buildings that were designed by Richard Granger with help of John Dobson, who built all these spectacular buildings, which are perfectly preserved. So that's just in the town centre. You've got the Literary and Philosophical Society, which was one of the first public-private members' libraries. It still is a private members' library, but quite unusual outside of London in that time. They have a spectacular collection of books and a really cool staircase and lots of hidden little rooms all over. So that's something you can visit that for free. You could pay to be a member, but it's all open to the public. And then after that, you want to be going further afield, so up into Northumberland for your castles. And you're just going to be falling over castles once you get up there. So pick a castle. We have Bamburgh Castle, which is about 2,000 years old, and it's perfectly. It's exactly as it's not as it was, because that'd be ridiculous. It'd be very cold. But it's it's still lived in by the original owners or the descendants of the owners. You can hire a room if you're very rich and you book in about 3 years in advance. You can have a night in Bamburgh Castle.
I want that. Oh, my boyfriend's still watching. James, we're on that.
Make a note, James, Bamburgh Castle. But if you book now, you probably get a room in about 5 years' time, and it'll cost you, I think, £1,200 or something for a night.
Start saving up.
We'll start saving now.
Have Christina saying, can you visit the tunnel caves? I don't know if you were trying to lure Christina to some tunnels and caves, and this is
no, not me. Do you know, Tim? It's not always me. Hi, Amy. It's not always me, Tim. I know I have this reputation for being a troublemaker. It's not always me. So I think what Christina's referring to is the Victoria tunnels.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things that in the north of England is best known for. Where one is mining, and the other is shipbuilding. So if you speak to anybody around here, their families will be one or the other. So my family were shipbuilders. A lot of people's families were miners. And actually on this side of the river in Gateshead, where I am, we've got a lot of the old mine heads. But the Victoria tunnels that Christina mentioned is it's one of those Victorian flights of fancy that seemed like a really good idea, but actually probably wasn't. So there was a mine, a pit head, further up in Newcastle, and it's quite difficult to get your coal from one end of Newcastle to the other, because obviously you've got to get it right down to the river. So what they did was they built what are called the Victoria tunnels, which took them from the mine at the top down through the city to the river. They built this at great expense, and it was used for probably about 10 years, if that. And then they're all there under the city. And obviously everything was just built on top of it, and it was just a ridiculous, lavish expense that was hardly ever used. But it is possible to do a tour. Some parts are closed, but other parts are still open, and you can pay and you can have a tour. And the guy shows you around, talks to you about the building, the reasons for it, why it failed. One of my favourite ridiculous stories of Victorian death happened in there. And then it was also used for it was used as air raid shelters. So it was so if you wanted to go, they do tours every so often, and it's a little bit cold. I don't recommend it if you're claustrophobic, but otherwise it's an amazing day out. It's really good fun.
Sounds fascinating.
I think Christelle's got to go, or she's turning into a
saw that, yeah.
We
this
can
is fascinating. Thank you.
We can, yeah, sure.
I'm going to be your friend on
Christelle.
I'm going to be your friend on Facebook, because I want to follow your blog. I'm very.
Yes, come and find me, and I will share my blog with you. There's only one Gudrun Lauret, so
I'll find you.
Won't have any trouble finding me.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye, Christelle.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, and I can change my other titles.
Yay! It looks amazing. Very professional.
Yeah, well, the great problem is, as I've just discovered, that I forgot to take any notice of the comments. So, like, what happens? Oh, on this one, it works correctly. It goes on top. But on the other one, it pushed everything up and it made everything look weird. So, yes.
Just seeing James mention Walkworth there. So, Walkworth is owned by the Percy family, who are still around in the northeast. They were really big players, particularly in the sort of the Tudor, the Stuarts, things like that. And they were, if there was going to be any kind of war, you'd want the Percys on your side, and they were very sort of savvy. They'd switch sides depending on what was going to be best for them. But the Percys own Warkworth Castle, which is now abandoned and run down, but they also own Alnwick Castle, which is most recently famous for being one of the filming locations for Harry Potter.
Ooh.
So the Percys own Warkworth and Alnwick, and I believe they still live in Alnwick, as far as I know.
So, well, this is a question I was thinking of asking, but I thought I'd ask the Christelle relevant question, the visitor thing first. But when did you realise you were interested in history? Like, that is somewhere that because I mean, I know you've done copywriting, and presumably you always had the history side, but now you put yourself as a heritage writer, which makes you sound like you're some sort of old writer that's in a box somewhere.
I my interest in history and heritage has always been that. I was born and brought up in York, and you can't go anywhere in York without falling over history. You've got all the Viking stuff. Every half the businesses in York are called Ebor or Eboracum because it was obviously the big Roman stronghold. It was obviously the capital of the country for some years. Constantine came there and died there, I think. And obviously we've got all the medieval influence with the shambles, and the buildings that tip towards each other. We've got Clifford's Tower, which is, has a dark history. We've got the railways. So you couldn't go anywhere without finding something historical. And my parents were quite keen to sort of, answer my questions and sort of explain things. And I did some of the ghost walks. So if you ever want a private ghost walk of York, save your money and I will take you around because I know all of the...
You're going to wear a sheet over your head and they're like 2 eyes.
You wouldn't be able to see me then, would you?
Yeah.
That would be invisible. But I do. I know all the ghost stories. And then, of course, my family's from here, from the northeast, from Gateshead, which is the south of the Tyne. And when we were kids, my parents used to alternate between National Trust or English Heritage membership. Every Sunday they would stick me and my brother in the car, whichever family members were around. My nana, one of my many uncles, and we just go off up to Northumberland, and you'd go and look at a castle, or you go to Bamburgh or Sea Houses or Lindisfarne, which is yet another castle.
Holy Island,
So Holy Island, So it was constantly there. We've got a lot of museums in Newcastle city centre. So I think it's always been there, and it's always fascinated me because there's so much scope. And I think it's, I think you can learn a lot from the history of your local area, and not a lot of people know a lot of the history of the Northeast. So I think that's something I'm endlessly fascinated about, is all the different things that people could actually learn about the Northeast, other than it being the party city, I think.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take I like asking bizarre questions that just come into my head. So I'm just going to
Good. Ask a bizarre question. I'm going to be horrible how to wipe my nose. I'm awfully sorry. Please continue.
Yeah. So, while you're wiping your nose, if, let's say, some television company approached you to spend a month in some city in the world outside of the UK to create a history documentary about it, which city would you pick?
Gosh, that's a great question. I don't know why they would pick me and not Mary Beard or, somebody like
let's
that.
say, like, there's some sort of, like,
great. Do you know,
specific pandemic and all the other experts are
they've all died or they're all in quarantine. Yeah. Do you know, there is much. One of the things that I've been interested in recent years, as you know, Tim, I spent a lot of time in France. And we go back and forwards to the northwest, to Brittany, which is a region, it's not a city, but there is so much history there that is also very little known. And I think that I feel like that should have a light shone on it. And what's particularly interesting is there's a lot of medieval history, but there's also there's the French Wars of Succession, the Breton Wars of Succession. A lot of the aristocrats and the royals came from France and those areas, ended up married into the British royal family. So I think I would like to go somewhere like Van, which is a fairly old port town, and just explore some of the history there, because there's big gaps, I think, in people's awareness of what there is to say. Plus, Brittany is where King Arthur supposedly came from. Yeah. So I have a plan, half a plan to really dig into the Arthurian mythology and look at some of the places that they say he lived and travelled.
Did you see any stones with swords in them that you were like?
Do you know there is one? There actually is one. It's unfortunately, I don't think it's really Excalibur, but somebody has in the Forest of Brocéliande, which is where he was. It's the forest. Somebody has put. I have yet to find it, but there is a sword and a stone. And recently, somebody has actually created from bronze, I think, a huge round table and seated Arthur at. I don't. You can't have the head of a round table, can you? But if there was a head, that's where Arthur is. So yes, there's all these crazy things that people just put up in the forest and go, oh look, this is the original round table, which is here in the forest. So yeah, I think there's a lot of scope there. And from what I've seen, the French aren't exactly great about talking about their heritage. Not even in French, never mind in English. So yeah, actually, that is. I'd like to make a documentary, but more, I would love to have the opportunity to go and work with a tourism board and just help them really dig into their stuff, which I don't think they do. So that would be amazing to look into the medieval ports and further back to the Arthurian stuff.
Okay, so let's say that one of these TV documentaries sees this program. It's fantastic. We want this woman to be the head of our show, or we want her as a tour guide because we spent all this money welding a stone against a sword. How can people find out about Gudrun? Copywriting, history, tour guide, party person.
So I'm moderately active on Twitter, but all my history stuff, my blog is on my website, which is just gudrunlauret.com. And I also have a podcast that I'm hoping to restart, which was also about history. It's called Timepieces History, and it was I've got 4 seasons so far. Bite-sized podcasts where I explore some of the north of England, some of the Roman heritage. So yeah, it's pretty varied, but everything's there on my website to dig into.
Okay, well, it was great to have you on the show today, and I've been moaning about the fact that I can't end shows properly, so I'm doing it again here by saying about the fact that I can't end shows. So, thanks to everybody we had a good attendance today. You're one of our more popular guests recently, mainly because it's about 6:30 in the morning Californian time. The show.
I'm glad we didn't do the 6:30 UK time. I would have.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean. I'm hoping to go to the US in March, and I meant to block out all of the time I was away, but people have booked slots on this show, and I'm like, am I going to get up at like 6 to do this? Some odd hotel in the US? Who knows?
It sounds like you could make a story out of it. You could vlog about it, or
Yeah,
Great
I
content.
might just do I might get my hand back on Christelle and just say, I've got to leave after 10 minutes.
They're only serving breakfast in the hotel till 7. I've got to get down and eat.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Tim and Christelle.
Yes, and yes. Goodbye, everybody. It's been great to have you on the show, and then I'll try and
Thanks,
find you.
everybody.
Bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.